Just recall the terror, fear, animosity, incoherence, dissonance of the time. If he had put his head out once, it would have been chopped off.
Now he's actually stepping forth and saying it wasn't a channel of serving high levels of truth, and he's apologising for that. And that's all a part of his soul destiny. It's incredible. You can't make this stuff up.
Let's dive in to a DM with the universe.
Hi and welcome to our podcast, A DM with the Universe. I'm Laura.
And I'm Hayley.
And in today's episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a channeled Q&A with the universe on Mark Zuckerberg. So Hayley, this was your brainchild actually to do this Q&A with the universe on Mark. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Where did this come from and why are we doing this?
Okay, so last week, Mark was on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't always listen to Joe Rogan, but I was interested in what Mark had to offer because he had made an announcement earlier this week. In essence, he was apologising for the censorship policies that he had put in place on Facebook and Instagram, and very much deflected the reason for that onto the US government and a lot of pressure that he was receiving. And it was just, it's interesting for me since COVID particularly, and I'm sure there's many of you out there that may feel the same way. We've been bombarded with new channels of information, new access points of information. So obviously we've got mainstream media, we've got our key social platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, X, and then you've got your more alternative media or information sites, so Telegram, BitChute, Rumble. And obviously X has positioned itself more in with that alternative crowd as far as free speech, and you can, have your own opinions on that quite readily. And as COVID sort of happened, we got a lot more censorship on those mid-mainstream platforms, should I say. And yeah, that has made me question Mark's intent in the world, and to hear him actually come forward and, apologise, I wanted to really know whether he was genuine about that.
So for anyone that has been living under a rock during COVID time, when we're referencing censorship, what is it that you're speaking to there, Hayley?
Okay, so fact checkers were put in place across those social platforms. So if anything went against what we would call the mainstream narrative, then everything would be fact checked. People were kicked off platforms for speaking out their own truth, and whole accounts shut down. And that didn't just happen with COVID. And he references this, obviously this started pre-COVID when Trump was kicked off platforms as well. So it's a broader message. But just for him to have done that about turn at this point in time, just really interesting. But sadly, because of the lies essentially that we've been told over the last, I want to say 4 years, but really forever. And you have to really get into that intuitive space to go, do I believe what I'm being told here? I hate that we have to do that all the time. And on the counter side, if you are someone that listens to alternative media, the same is true there. We've gotten to that point where we've tipped into, sensationalism on both sides of the scale. So
I'd agree.
Throw the coin in the air and let's see.
My discernment muscle, for want of a better word, has flexed, has become so in tune the last however many years it's been as well.
Yeah.
The episode is a Q&A with the universe. So you and I had a conversation a couple of days ago, and we came up with some questions that we would like the universe to provide us with guidance for. But I think it's really important that we do add the little disclaimer here that this is for entertainment purposes only, and what has been discussed in the channeling doesn't necessarily reflect my or Hayley's personal opinion.
Well said.
Yeah. Done. Okay, let's get to it. Before we do start with the questions, just tell us a little bit about what it actually truly means when we say we've asked the universe some Q&As. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, it's stepping outside of myself. It's connecting in with higher collective consciousness and really pulling through that information that is unbiased in the sense, well, I hope it's unbiased. The intention is it's unbiased in the sense of what comes through.
And to speak to that, I was quite intrigued by some of the answers that came through. Some of it wasn't actually what I was expecting.
Either.
So,
and that's what I love. Like when my channeling comes through and it may be contrary to what I would have believed on the surface, I'm like, oh, that definitely didn't come from me.
Great. So in the interest of keeping this episode short and snappy and very much focused on the Q&A with the universe and the answers that it's provided around Mark, the first question that we asked was, what level of truth did Mark Zuckerberg speak on the Joe Rogan podcast? And was it a publicity stunt or sincerity?
And just for anyone that hasn't seen that, it's a 3-hour-ish podcast. And at the point that I channeled this, I'd only watched the first hour because at that point I was like, okay, I really need to sit with it. That was something that triggered for me. And all he had really focused on in that first hour was his change in direction for censorship. So we'll get to their answer.
Wonderful.
A fine question to start with. Mr. Zuckerberg's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast was one of sincerity. He was willingly offering his sentiment of apology and the misgivings that have befallen his social media empire and therefore humanity. There is a genuine belief in his being of wrongdoing, and it is a wise time for him to express this. He is a businessman after all, first and foremost.
So the second question that we asked the universe was, what drove him to start Facebook at the age of 19?
So his drive to begin a new method of interaction across the globe was sparked by his innate knowing of a cascade of conscious awakening. He had this internal foresight, unconsciously to be true, of a time where interaction globally would become a mainstay, and his role was to forge a bridge or a pathway to lead us all there. The interconnection of all people across the globe will be driven by the truth of consciousness. And this was like a stepping stone to bring about our inquiry and our actual downright expectation to be able to and to desire to connect globally long term. It's something within each of us, this knowing, and it actually sparked this knowing that we all hold, this instrument within to open pathways of communication on a grand scale. There will become a time where Facebook is a derelict dinosaur in the sense of communication, and that will be quicker than many of you may think.
Wow, that is interesting. Okay, so the third question speaks to Mark Zuckerberg's soul plan. So for those that aren't aware of what a soul plan reading includes, the soul plan reading covers 4 different aspects of our life. So it's calculated on our full name. It can give some really incredible insight into a person's life and our soul purpose as well. So the first one is our karmic challenges. Once people understand a challenge, they can actually see a pattern of challenges throughout their lifetime, and they can actually become quite peaceful with the fact that that is their challenge for this lifetime. So the second part of a soul plan are talents, and it is exactly that, every sense of the word, a talent, that skill set that we don't even know that we have, we take it for granted. The third aspect of our soul plan is our goals, so what our soul actually wants to achieve through using those talents. Then the overall aspect, and the big one that we look for in the soul plan, is the soul destiny. So the very reason why that soul has incarnated into this lifetime. So that's the one that I've focused on the most with Mark. And it's really quite interesting. Mark's soul destiny is the 9-9 energy, which is that of power, peacemaking, and protection. So the 9-9 energy is an extremely powerful energy to hold. It's likened to like a dragon energy, like that real fiery, huge presence. It's also said to be quite a big energy to hold in a human body. So to be able to achieve our soul destiny, so our ultimate purpose in life, we need to be able to achieve our goals as well. And I just wanted to have a quick talk about his goal in life, and it might help be able to put some of these Q&As into context, and then people can make up their own mind as to whether he's on path, whether he might be meeting his soul destiny, or it might be something that he's still yet to come to. The 9-9 energy, their goal in life is to acknowledge full power and protection of soul and come into full soul consciousness, serving as a channel of high level of truths. Now, even just that in itself to me was quite a mind-blowing moment. The very word, serving as a channel of high levels of truth. And when you actually think about the fact that he created Meta as a channel, and now he's actually stepping forth and saying it wasn't a channel of serving high levels of truth, and he's apologising for that and I guess declaring the reasons why that happened. That's all a part of his soul destiny. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
You can't make this stuff up. So like any energy, our energy can be in balance and it can be out of balance. When this energy, this 9-9 powerful energy is in balance, it can show up as true belief in self. They're the ones that stand up for or are the peacemaker for the underdog, which was interesting because because of the censorship. I'm not quite sure he hit the mark there.
Yeah.
And the other part about this energy is when it's out of balance, they can be quite disempowered. They can be mistrusting. They're very disconnected to their spirituality as well. So that's something that I needed to probably bring in for the next question, is the fact that 9-9 energy, when out of balance, don't trust their own spiritual channel. They block their own power or they can misuse power.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So with that information, the next question to the universe being Mark Zuckerberg's soul plan speaks to him being on a spiritual path in this lifetime, or that's what his soul destiny would like him to achieve. Does he, in essence, meet this face on, or is spirituality not a driving force?
For Mark, we say this: he has compounded his belief in a technological world. This is not to say that he doesn't have the girth to express beyond that, and in time that is available to him. But for now, his key driver is real-world technological advancement. The spiritual basis of his life is less sound in his own awakening to self.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing with his challenges as well. So on the back of that then, what role does he play in the collective advancement of technology, be it for or against the goodwill of humanity?
Zuckerberg is a mainstay. He will continue his progress at the forefront of technological achievement. His life calls for innovation at its core, and rightly or wrongly, he will try anything once. Fall short, and he will pick himself back up again and move on. It is now, and in this future decade coming, that his greatest advancements in tech will be seen. Watch this space. He has more bubbling in the cauldron, if they could use such a metaphor. His delivery of new tech, which will become old tech within a year, is one of fast-paced theatrics. He is out to play ball. Wait and see.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So will this tech benefit humanity?
That is a wise question, and no is the concise answer. The technological advancement is one that delivers further separation from the holistic stasis of humanity. Not that it's his intention to drive apart the fabric of creation, but in his ingenuity, he will force that upon us. He must be managed in time to bring us back into alignment with the source coding of conscious creation. But for now, he will run wild in his creative endeavour without the foresight of the crisis that's on the horizon. Silly man.
Silly man. So on a personal level, what type of character is he?
So it came through that Mark preys on the ability of others to expand his thinking. He siphons out the goodness, the intellect, the advancement from other souls in order to grow his own advancement. And now that doesn't mean that this is all in detriment to others or to humanity in that sense. But it is his way to expand his creative impulse. And he's fed from that upliftment of others. So his inspiration drops when he's in a crowded room, and he internalizes that and he expands further, and his intentions expand further, and so on and so on. They liken it to he builds a castle on top of a mountain of bodies, and all he sees is the next mountain. So he's a true warrior in that sense, one that does not give up the fight to conquer. He offers humanity a vision of creative prowess, and that is his biggest asset, to improve the world to think beyond the confinements of reality. And so we lead into virtual reality.
Which that was a question that we did have. So to follow on with that, why is he driven to install VR into our lives? Why the need to play outside of, but inside of consciousness?
His craving for VR stems from his greatest asset, which is to see the world beyond worlds. Unfortunately for humanity, this is experienced as external rather than an internal parallel. So deflecting from his ability to seek spiritually, he has to build this virtual reality to understand himself in his fullness, an ever expanding world of free conscious thought. He can build mountain upon mountain in this frame of reference or in this VR setting, and never hit a ceiling and never run out of human inspiration. He forever builds by adding the muscle of AI to self-generate and populate. The facade of this world is one that intersects humanity right at that point of conscious awakening, and that is the dangerous part. It's the splitting of selves, which is, people's personas or identities by partaking in these virtual worlds, much like the splitting of an atom, can leave one big volatile mess. So their warning: approach virtual reality with a limited sense of exploration and entertainment. Step beyond those metrics and you will find yourself in a world of extraction, painfully so for the human soul.
The interesting part about all of that is that warning that has come from the universe is approaching VR with caution, basically.
Yeah.
And the fact that it can be painful for our human soul. Where did that land in you, Hayley?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because, obviously AI is such a huge topic at the moment, and as that comes with it, virtual reality. I really feel that there's merit in what was said and that warning. I think using it for entertainment purposes and maybe some kind of exploration of self, I think, that's probably quite fine. But really, when we are going to self-exist outside of ourselves, we already do that. That's part of our spiritual discovery and spiritual understanding, is to learn to come within and really see that all this reality lives within us if we really want to go there. So then to not only, we've already externalized our physical beings, we're then going to externalize everything else into like another world that doesn't exist beyond us. It is dangerous. It's tricky.
Just that sentence, the splitting of selves, people's personas or identities, much like the splitting of an atom, can be one big volatile mess. That scares the crapper out of me, quite frankly.
Yeah. And more, and and then we just look at the generations to come, like they've started growing up in this world. They haven't even had the chance to know themselves at any level yet before they've already stepped outside of themselves or created character roles, avatars for their existence. I know we've had video games and gaming for obviously a number of decades now, and the rise in that is insane. So it's something that's going to be very easy for people to slip into, but we do run a really big risk of losing connection altogether.
Particularly as people become more dissatisfied with their lives, with their body, with their relationships. I do recall we've spoken about it earlier that some other channelers we follow have actually said that there is a potential that in 2025 we will see more AI robots introduced into our lives in the form of humans having relationships with AI robots, and laws being changed that they're able to have that relationship recognised legally.
Yeah.
It's blurry.
Yeah.
Where does it start and where does it stop, I guess, is the question.
And I think that's the issue,
It's already started, I should say.
I don't know if I've solidified my belief around it yet or what I feel about it, and I can see there's pros and cons for all of it, and where AI has its place, and virtual reality for that sense. But it's tainted with like this, we can completely lose ourselves energy. We really could destroy humanity.
It can turn into, in the universe's words, one big volatile mess.
That's right. Yeah.
So that leads us into the next question that comes up, which is about why is he winding back his fact-checking on Facebook and the censorship on the platform so publicly. So his interview with Joe Rogan in that first hour was heavily focused on that announcement, which left us with more questions, naturally. So first question is about connection. His supporting reason was to get back to basics, in essence, and bring about the social interaction of a social media platform. So bringing social interaction once more, which is why that platform was intended for. So how can this be the driving force when sponsored ads and algorithms drive nothing of the sort? How can he justify this statement?
He is a wise businessman. Nothing else needs to be said. There is rhetoric in his approach, this nostalgic connotation of connection, but there's mass money making as the reality. And the feel-good wording that he's put out around it inspires some to feel favourable to the platforms, so Facebook, Instagram, and to him as well, once more. It generates goodwill, but not a truthful reality. Unfortunately, that is and never will be available again on his platform. Nothing is more antisocial than social media. It is a phone directory listing with a billboard-style advertising strategy. Get ready. The change will come when humanity no longer needs the billboards.
Okay, so this next question is a little bit long-winded, but it's in relation to the podcast that he did with Joe Rogan, specifically related to the time markers. So in 2016, when the Trump presidential campaign ran, and in 2020 with COVID, he referred to 2016 as the start of censorship driven by agencies and governments of the US at the time. So then comes 2020 with the COVID narrative, and he is held over a barrel, to paraphrase, to not allow for any content with the vaccine side effects, and with fact checkers to denounce any health-orientated support for COVID recovery, be it naturally or independently at the very least, from contractual pharmaceuticals. So first off, is this true? And was he held over a barrel?
By the graciousness of God, he was held to ransom to be the picture boy pin-up of COVID compliance. He was given the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, in owning COVID compliance, and he took them with reluctancy, but with this expectation of something in return, be that humanity's approval for doing the right thing and saving the planet, or government support, or additional income streams that may stem from that. Whatever the metrics, he did expect to gain overall in respect to the outcome. So he was measured in his approach to be manhandled, so to speak, but he was of the belief that there would be imminent kickbacks.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Okay, so this may answer the next question. As in all reality, he could have chosen not to follow orders and put one message out to his 3.5 billion users that denounces the government for interference. His reach and share of voice is mind-boggling. One post could have brought down that house of cards that were pushing him, but he didn't take that route. Why?
The universe's response. My word, he would have been the stuck pig of the population. Just recall the terror, fear, animosity, incoherence, dissonance of the time. If he had put his head out once, it would have been chopped off. His publicity profile has not the strength that his businesses do, and there would have been a witch hunt. he's not in a position of power to do this, as ironic as that seems on the outside with what he owns and what he does. He is a much smaller voice in an even smaller pond of public relations, and he would never have made it to the shoreline, which blows my mind, I must say, because to think that he has the eyes of 3.5 billion people on his platforms, that he does not have that share of voice or that power to actually make change. Like, who does?
Yeah, I know, and I've been reflecting on that. And I guess I do understand Facebook, Instagram, they're a well-oiled machine. 3.5 billion people use it, but don't necessarily have that trust and belief in Mark as an individual person, even though he's the developer and the brains trust behind it. He really doesn't feel like he has that public status.
No, if you compare him to someone like Elon, where anyone that uses X, Twitter, most of them feel like they have this relationship with him. He is so public facing in his own platform. I don't feel like Mark has that. He doesn't have that hero type persona that people that use his services look up to. They just use his services.
No, and I wonder if it's because he developed it at 19, which is quite young. I reflect back to what I was doing at 19, and I don't think I
definitely wasn't developing programs.
Definitely was not. And I definitely wouldn't have been wanting to put myself out there as the face of such a big platform as well. So he's 40 now.
Yeah.
It is interesting that he hasn't tried to take the reins publicly like Elon has, but maybe that's just not a part of his character though as well.
Yeah, and I think just getting back to the question about not putting out a public post that he could have reached so many people, it's a big thing to change people's perception of reality. And that's a big task to take on.
It is.
And if he did that, the government backlash, the mainstream media backlash would have just been over the top. So I think he would have been taken out for being insane or having his own agenda for power.
Yeah. Particularly that topic of COVID was so polar.
Totally.
And I guess he's human at the end of the day.
Absolutely. We'll give him a little bit of break.
We'll give him a little bit. So to follow up on that, and the claims that he was being pushed and really didn't want to enforce the censorship, then that front-facing aspect of Facebook where we had frames developed for "I've just been vaccinated" seems to contradict his personal view.
Yeah. Would you like to know the response on that? So the universe says that his team did this in light of the machine that is social enterprising. Simply, they would have done it because they have always done it. They jumped on the marketing arm of a trending topic and made it a visual cue for engagement and social interaction on what is a social media platform. They were not aware or savvy enough to foresee the division that it would actually incite, and his involvement was not as apparent in this decision as you may think.
Yeah, so why now?
He's not in control of everything.
So why now? Why address the censorship mistake now? He references Trump in his address. So is this an intentional placement?
He is regretting his decision to move ahead with the mainstream agenda, and he sees the inauguration of President Trump as a valid reset point. He can piggyback on the expulsion of truth that will hit the airways over the coming weeks and months, and therefore he rides neatly on the back of that wave. Aligned with the saviour, they're saying, as many see Trump in their eyes, and he will just wear the wash off of that. The universe does add, though, he will be ready to set a new agenda for Facebook and Instagram in 12 months. Wait and see. So that's something that we can keep an eye on and see if something changes on those platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. So in closing, if you had a message for Mark, what would it be?
So the universe's message, Mark, be mindful of your power of creation. Step aside and watch as the world comes to grip with the awakening of self, and float into this space with your nows, but in a newness to your endeavours. Tech is a wonderful tool to be used in a creative way. Just don't destroy the backyard you sleep in. It will bring about a turmoil that is not necessary for human evolution. Take a moment, breathe, and reset your trajectory.
What a powerful message.
Yeah, I was really blown away by what came through on Mark. Without going into my own personal opinions of what I thought it was going to be, it was a little contrary to what I was expecting. And yeah, so he's obviously got the potential to offer the planet something quite innovative. It's just he needs to be mindful that he treads in the right direction around that.
I don't actually really know that I have much of an opinion on Mark Zuckerberg. I really loved and I truly appreciate the answers that have come through from the universe. And he's not an Elon Musk. He's not someone that is so polarizing that everybody has an opinion on.
Yeah.
For the last 21 years, he's just ridden that wave and made mistakes along the way. He certainly has learned from those mistakes. And I think that's a big point to take home, that he was authentic in his apology.
If we think of America and the whole political landscape, he's managed to sort of step aside and then align with the new president. He's trying to put himself as non-partisan, but then he referenced Trump quite heavily, even in the Joe Rogan interview. And I just found it really interesting to see if that genuineness was actually there or whether he really was trying to jump on board of something.
And at the end of the day, he is a businessman. He is a business owner. He is in business to make money. I think trying to predict humanity and where we want to go, what we want out of such a public profile, that would be a really incredibly hard thing to do. I think he's a businessman in the hot seat. So I've taken a lot from this channeling, and it will be incredibly interesting to watch where he does take Facebook in the next 12 months. It'll be interesting to see where VR goes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be a key thing for me because Facebook's very much become driven by ads. It's a pay-to-play platform now. And whether that sentiment of what he wants to do and wind that back and to try and get more organic engagement on that platform, whether that actually happens. Yeah. And it's like the oldies are on Facebook, so it's going to have to die at one point, hey. We're all getting old.
Yeah. So if anybody does know Mark, feel free to pass along this episode. I think there's some really beautiful advice for him.
That would be so interesting if you
wouldn't that be so beautiful to have him on and actually ask some of these questions about his soul plan, his goals. Does he align with any form of spirituality? Either, is that something
whether he felt like it was a valid channel? Like whether he actually feels like there's some connection or some resonance in what came through.
I know it would be fabulous. But and also for him to heed some of the advice and the warnings that are coming through as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep you posted if he drops us a DM.
Yeah. How hilarious. Yes. Well, thank you for bringing through those answers as divinely as you always do. Always interesting. And thank you, audience, for joining us on the couch where the ordinary meets the extraordinary.
Bye.
Bye.